Hey, this is Ron Capps. I'm going to rant for a minute. You know what really pisses me off? Why they say drag racers aren't athletes. I spend a lot of time on a treadmill playing racquetball hours of the week. You tell me you want to go over 6 Gs in 4.5 seconds and back to 0 and not call us an athlete? That pisses me off. You know what else pisses me off? People bringing their kids to the races, no earplugs. That pisses me off. Lug nuts. He pisses me off. This is Ron Capps, and that's my rant.
Well, Freak Nation.
Whoops.
Well done.
NHRA Funny Car Champion, Ron Capps, joining us here in the Freak Nation as we celebrate 20 years. And Ron, as that's airing, I can see off video your face as that video's going, and you're starting to cringe like, what the hell am I about to say?
Well, those 3 things still piss me off, first of all. Well, 2 out of the 3, but I forgot we did some of that. Now I'm scared because that's probably some of the most sane stuff that we used to do. So many stories. We've been around. Well, I've been around with you guys a long time, so I'm sure there's some stuff in the vault that I don't want to see.
Well, wait a minute, Kenny. I'm going to jump in here on purpose because we've always called Ron Capps Ronald C. Capps whenever he would come on the show. And now I know the C stands for complaints. Because right there in the video, we got video proof right there.
Or canceled now. Now the videos are coming out.
No. If it actually made it past ESPN and Fox Sports and Speed Channel's filters, then it's all good. It's all good.
Well,
it's the stuff that never made it to air.
Well, yeah, true. Most of the sponsors I had on that uniform, I don't have anymore, so maybe that's good.
Ron, what we're trying to do here is bring in some of, like you said, the OGs here in the Freak Nation that have been a part of this thing for the last 20 years. And to hear stories, we've been interviewing you for 20 plus years. We like to hear stories from the dudes and women that we've interviewed in the past of really how they felt about Speed Freaks when we came about, and how we started to kind of disorient people with some of our approach to interviewing capabilities. Do you remember the first time you met us? Does that even come to mind?
Yeah, I think you were doing weather on a TV station or something, or sports or something, were you? At one time?
Yes.
I think you came in the Pomona and did an interview with me. Maybe staging. I was just like, what was that just happened? Like, you were not the normal interview, and it was edgy, kind of out there, and you were asking me weird questions, and somehow we hit it. It's probably why we hit it off so good. But I think that was the first time I ever met you. It was something, maybe it was Media Day or something at Pomona. Mm-hmm. And I am I wrong? I don't know. Do you remember?
No, that's right. I was actually doing entertainment, sports, and occasionally I was doing weather for UPN News 13.
I was just joking about the weather. I
didn't know it
was. Kenny, didn't you have a Good Luck Weather Duck?
No, that crashed. That was in college, man. I had my Good Luck Weather Duck, and I got booted off of college weather at the time. But to go back, even before Crash was involved in this, like you just mentioned, Statman and I came to your abode and started swinging paddles, right?
Well, we met in LA.
Mm-hmm.
I think we met somewhere in somewhere near where Simpson headquarters were back then. They were making my fire suits back then. Somewhere at some racquetball club. You guys found out I played racquetball, and I think the first time, didn't we go to some club and we met, and I drove up to LA and you guys met me there?
No, it wasn't Statman. It wasn't LA. It was down off Golden.
Yeah, it was like Huntington Beach. You're on the edge.
Yeah.
Right.
Around in there.
Off the 405 somewhere.
Yeah,
right.
See, you've moved up so far in the food chain now that Huntington Beach, one of the big communities in Southern California, that's downstream from you. You're so big now.
Look, I can do the Benny Hill on Statman's head.
Some of the prettiest women.
It's like the Brady Bunch. I can reach over and I could slap you,
Ron. Yeah.
and then I can wave to her.
Hi.
right,
kind of
so
fun.
let me-
Step in.
So
Let me
keep
get
it down.
back online here a little bit. You
Sorry,
were
sorry.
around at the beginning. You know, the racquetball might have come before we were even on the air. So you had some experience with us, and as you went back to the paddock and talked to some other drivers, did they ask you, are those people as insane as they appear? What did they ask you about being on Speed Freaks once you started appearing regularly?
Well, I used to have to kind of cover for you guys for a while because there were some drivers. We'd be in the staging lanes or the starting line, and somebody go, "Man, I just got interviewed by some wacky group of radio people." I go, "Hey, they're cool." I go, "They're cool. They're just a little more edgy than normal, and they push the limit a little bit sometimes." But it was funny because some people didn't know how to take you guys, and much like I didn't at the very beginning. But as it progressed, you guys obviously became a mainstay in the world racing, and especially in the drag racing. And so I'd see you guys a lot with two Pomona races, and then we started venturing out and doing other fun stuff. I know Kenny remembers the Statman, I think you were there too, the dirt races that we did. A few of those where we
Oh, yeah.
absolutely crashed everybody's cars.
Oh, right.
Sedalia, I think, wasn't it? In Sedalia?
Yeah, Sedalia, Missouri. Yeah, so
Yes.
a lot of SEMA show stuff, fun
Mhm.
Mopar stuff, PRI show. God, every time I think, something else pops up in my head. I mean, the Mile High Nationals has always been something. It's always been a blast. I mean, you start off with a party in Golden, and
we owe part of our longevity, that 20 years right there on the screen. We owe part of our longevity to Ron Capps, Ronald C. Capps. Thank you, partner.
yeah. And see, it's actually Ronald A. Capps. I never understood where he got the C. I don't.
That's a Kenny
And then
thing.
We did some videos for Napa. Those I was given the champ, what do they call it, champ cleaner or something. They came up with a fictitious thing that you could clean your stuff off after Winter Circle that Napa came up with, and it wasn't real, but it had my name on it. And in it, I was signing at the end Ronald J. Capps. So I'm not even sure where they came up with. I think they took it, you're Ronald C. Capps, but it's actually Anthony is my middle name, Ronald Anthony. I've always wanted to tell you that this whole time.
Did anybody ever call you Tony?
No, Anthony a few times, but not Tony.
All right.
Your mom when she's mad at you?
Yeah. Oh,
Ronald
yeah.
Anthony.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hey,
That was.
but Ron, what was so awesome about what we did, sorry I'm patting myself on the back, is you look at the screen, you have a black man, a woman, a dude with two earrings who had long hair part of the time. You just didn't see that in motorsports. I think we may have channeled your inner irreverency with our approach from time to time.
Yeah. And it was fun because Statman and we would always talk road racing. We would talk some of the road racers that we were mutual friends with. And so, in fact, there were a couple times in the past where he almost got me into the Winter X Games. We started talking to people about doing rally stuff and just a lot of fun stuff. And then, and then we talked sport. It was these conversations with you guys. You guys are all so different. And Lugnuts was one of a kind. I still run into him once in a while. But yeah, it was just fun. And what's crazy is throughout all that, there became this mojo that we talked about, right?
Yes.
And there were times that I didn't talk to you guys and I would not qualify or something dreadful. And then I would talk to you guys and we would go win the next race. And then in winning a race, you also get to get on the show on Sunday nights. Some of the problem has been in the past that you air on the West Coast, and if we win in Gainesville, by the time you want me to go live on your show, I'm feeling pretty good at the ale house, right, with all my crew and hanging out. So now, in the last few years, my publicist, she's like, okay, after Winter Circle Speed Freaks, and I said we better record it right now because it's going to get ugly later. So I learned a valuable lesson. We did one from the ale house one time. We won Gainesville. I don't know if you guys remember. And I hung up the phone, and whoever was standing next to me goes, "Ooh, that's probably not going to be so good. And it was great. You guys loved it. But at that point, I was like, we probably should do our interviews before we start celebrating with the crew.
That's hysterical. But then again, though, I mean, we'd have some fun times, like you brought up the Mile High Nationals and the party in Golden beforehand. And then afterwards, we would try to get our show in the can so that we could hang out with you guys at the bars there in Golden afterwards. I mean, there are so many fun times. Yeah, we can get a little loose and have a little too much to drink. But at the same time, we've had some great conversations because of some of those bonding moments, too.
Yeah, you guys always have a way of getting somebody to come out of their shell a little bit, and it's good and bad. There's been times where I'm like, oh, maybe we should re-record that. I shouldn't have probably said that, or maybe somebody will take it wrong. But your show's always been where it fit right in. You know, you get a little edgier. You can actually say and speak your mind, like that opening thing with the 3 things that pissed me off. I would have never would have done that on 99.9% of the other shows that we go do. And so yeah, there's been some times where you think, oh my gosh, am I pushing the edge? And then I'll listen to Keselowski or somebody else on the show and hear them do your show, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm all right, I feel okay.
Speak your mind, that's all we want.
It was always Selzy, though. It always has something to do with Selzy. You know, you talk about Golden and the Mile Highs, him getting ordained and then marrying that couple where I was the best man. Right. I think at one point we were going to float down that river. I don't know. I think Selzy did it, and somehow I was smart enough to not do it, and he ended up hurting his back. But that couple that you guys married, that I was in the wedding with, I see them at least 3 or 4 races a year that they show up, and they always come by and say hi. They look the same. Great couple. And it's funny because we always talk about that night in Golden, how they got married on your show. You were in the wedding, and you helped put it on, and Selzy actually married him dressed up like a nun. I think he thought a priest and a nun somehow looked the same, but he looked like a nun when he got ordained. And I'll just never forget some of those times with him and you guys.
Well, give us more of that, because that's kind of what we like here. Give us more of those kinds of stories from the road, or bonding moments between you and other drivers.
Oh, geez.
Like you and
Selzy,
Schumacher.
Yeah, I got to think of which ones I can tell even. I don't the Chili Bowl stories were absolutely a blast. A lot of times we would start on the West Coast here and do some benefit, like we did the Eric Medlin race, and ended up jumping on somebody was dumb enough to give us a Learjet to fly us to Tulsa after doing a Selzy benefit race in micro midgets, and playing a card game called Guts all the way there, and drinking, and landing in Tulsa at like 4 a.m, meeting Tony Stewart and those guys there, and then allegedly racing rental cars to the hotel in the wee hours of the morning, and then going later that night and jumping in a midget and racing the Chili Bowl. Like those kind of times with Selzy and guys like that were a blast. I mean, I look back and I go, man, I'm so lucky that we got to do some of that. But the Sedalia dirt race, I know Kenny and Stat were there. It was Casey Kane and Clint Boyer, and I pull up pictures once in a while. Oh my God! And you're talking a half-mile dirt track with no banking, and they stuck in these dirt late models, and I think we wrecked all but 3 or 4 of them. I won.
I didn't wreck mine.
I did win.
Mine. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you might have been that 1% with me. But man, that was just another one of those fun times where we worked in a lot of fun stuff. And I think actually somehow I ran into old video of I did something for you guys, and I remember walking out of a porta potty or doing an interview and walking into a porta potty or something, or we were messing with some guy. Anyway, I was one of your reporters. I was a Freaks reporter, and I was giving some guy a bad time. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, it was.
And I think at one point I walked.
Adrian?
That was Adrian.
Yeah.
Adrian won the trip to Sedalia, and he was one of our pit reporters, and he was interviewing you coming out of the crapper, and then you guys were smack talking each other. Then he started getting after you about being Lord Farquhar, and then you said something about him being.
I leveled him. I felt bad afterwards. He just turned red, and I was like, "Uh-oh, did I go too far?"
No, never.
Yeah.
He still talks about that too. He'll send us messages every once in a while on Facebook, and he's like, "I'll never forget that time. That was so cool. Made me a Ron Capps fan." So that's awesome.
You got to understand, Ron, that too far in the Freak Nation is not on GPS. You got to really stretch the.
That's the whole point. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Well, Ron,
There's time. Oh, go
Ron,
ahead.
one synonymous thing was the fact that you've been with Mopar for so long. And I've got to say that Mopar, we were Mopar for 7 or 8 years as well. Don't you think Mopar allowed you guys, you can't bring Selzy and Ron Capps and Tony Schumacher and others into a brand like that and expect a bunch of wallflowers to not say anything, right?
And that was the point. Like because sometimes you look around, and anytime I do anything, you know, I got asked to be on Howard Stern a couple times here in the last 3 or 4 years, and my publicist, of course, is freaking out because they can, you know, things can go sideways in any interview, but they're always worried of saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. And so with you guys, it was never a worry because Mopar was so involved. It's like almost it was expected of you to make your appearance with Speed Freaks a little more exciting than normal, which was perfect for us. Like Selzy and I mean, we were like, here we go. And I always followed his lead anyway. It was good cop, bad cop with me and Selzy, and I had to play I guess I was the good cop. But
Yes.
they encouraged it, which was so much fun, and they encouraged you guys to be you guys and not tell you what they expected of you. So it was always fun when whatever we showed up at, and it was the big Mopar area and Speed Freaks, and that was the itinerary. We knew it was going to be fun. We could drink ahead of time and not worry about it, which is rare.
Right. What's changed so much for you, Ron Capps? I mean, we're talking about 20 years of motorsports and 20 years of the Speed Freaks, but your 20 years, I mean, you have a career way before these 20 years started, but from 2000 to now, what's changed for you? I know it's a lot, whether it's sponsor-wise or your perception of interviews or how the media does things or how the series does things. What has been your favorite changes and maybe some things that you're like, nah, we could have done that better?
Well, you know, I started in the Top Fuel car, and then when Don Prudhomme hired me, that's when, you know, you're thrust into this limelight, and you got to be careful because you're driving for a legend, right? Big sponsors brought in. We had Chevrolet come in at the time, and Skoll and Copenhagen, just all that. That was a fun 9 years, and learning from a guy like Don Prudhomme, you know, how cool he is and legendary. And we would show up at any other race, IndyCar or NASCAR. And my first time showing up at a NASCAR race with Snake, we walked right over to Earnhardt's bus and hung out with Dale Sr. and went to Charlotte and actually went out in his old shop and drank with him. I mean, things like that you just can't say anymore. So those 9 years, I had a lot of fun, and that's when I got to start hanging out with you guys. And so I didn't really worry about it. We were tobacco sponsored. We were sponsored by Miller Brewing Company at the time. Our appearances were at bars mainly prior to races. It was a fun time period, and tobacco was sponsoring NHRA with Winston. It was just a different era. They paid you a lot of money to go do stuff. They didn't care. It was tobacco money. And so you're off having fun, and it was wide open. You never thought about 2 years, 3 years down the road. And so when I went to Schumacher's, I started to get a little older and settle down a little bit. And you guys never changed through that whole time period. Now I'm looking back at it, but I just learned at certain times, certain things happen that remind you that you can't trust everybody. First of all, whether it's sometimes there's been fans in the past that have just crossed certain lines, and every athlete or whatever, you know, every celebrity will tell you the same thing. They've had these moments. I'm sure you guys have as well, being in the industry, where you're reminded that you can't quite trust everybody like you're used to, and it kind of puts you on your heels for a little bit, unfortunately. So interviews are the same thing. I've learned where stuff's taken out of context in interviews, and you're like, I didn't say that, or they just took that one little topic and put it out, and next thing you know, you look like an idiot. So to answer your question, I learned over the years usually from things that weren't good rather than good, and how to make sure I didn't, you know, I I think I've been doing this since 97 professionally, and never had to bring money to an owner for sponsorship. So, I mean, that there's not a lot of people probably could say that, where they've had to bring sponsorship for a seat. And to have that longevity in a sport like this and be professional about it and get paid and have a house and a family like this because of drag racing, it's pretty special to say, but I've learned how to keep that going, good ways and bad ways, over the years. So your show, you know, later, I had to tiptoe a couple times. You know, you get certain sponsors, and I'm sure you guys would see it at the time, and, you know, you're like, that's not the same Ron that it used to be. There's just certain things you realize in time periods that you got to be a little more coherent of what's going on around you, and so you're always a little cautious. But for the most part, your show on Sunday nights have never changed. Whether we've done interviews like this, you guys have never changed. We've kind of rolled with the times, but it's been fun. It's a nice, refreshing thing to know whenever my publicist says, "Hey, we need to do a Speed Freak show," and I said, "Yep, let me know when."
What about the series or drag racing in general? A lot's changed there too, and unfortunately, we've lost some good friends. What with the management and how things have changed with the series? I mean, going from, you know, quarter mile to 1,000 feet. I mean, it's just bizarre. Would you ever want to sometimes go back to a quarter mile at places that have an uphill runoff, like, let's say, Sonoma or, gosh, Vegas or some places like that?
Yeah, I honestly, no. I thought about it, and it would be cool. I get to go do quarter mile racing when I do the nostalgia, the March meet and the hot rod reunion. When I jump in those nostalgia funny cars, they go 260 miles an hour in 5-point-something seconds, shifting, no downforce, driving them. I finally won the historic over 60-year-old March meet, one of the most historic races in drag racing, and I won it in a nitro fuel altered, which has been in my dream forever, just to drive one, let alone win the biggest race. That trophy is in the middle of my whole trophy case, like smack dab in the middle. So and that's quarter mile, and you shift, you reach down and pull a lever. I mean, that's stuff I get to do. So I do that more than a lot of drivers. My answer would be a little different, because I get to run a quarter mile at these certain races at Famoso when we run the March meet or the hot rod reunion. In our cars, even with the long tracks, I don't think I'd want. There's nothing good with our race cars that happen that last 300 feet. Honest to God, you're ducking, you're waiting for something bad to happen. There's nothing good except the extra speed that's going to happen. And then believe it or not, most of the time nowadays, we are more worried about getting our cars stopped before you hit the sand or the net, more than you're excited about making a 330 mile per hour run. And that's not good. So there are a few tracks that have plenty of room, but it'd be fun maybe to try it, but I just don't, things go wrong now. You're going so fast. That extra 1.5, 2 seconds that you don't have now, it's scary. And I've been in high speed into the sand and net and been trapped in the car, and I could tell you it was probably the scariest thing in my whole career. And so I wouldn't want to put any other driver through that. I don't want to go through it again. So to answer your question, fans, the hardcore fans, you know, they scream and yell about the quarter mile racing. I think we've had the best racing in decades. The close, tight knit, almost like pro stock in the nitro categories, like winning by inches at 330 miles per hour. So I don't think we should change anything.
Wow,
Nice.
Ron Capps, that's an incredible few minutes there. You've driven for two of the greatest drivers in drag racing history, the Snake and Don Schumacher. What'd you learn from them?
They're so different. First of all, I mean, they are completely different people. Don Prudhomme was a self-made car painter when he was a kid. A lot of people don't realize his actual start was when TV Tommy Ivo didn't want to get into one of his dragsters. He was a little scared. And so Snake was actually one of the crew guys helping on it. And he jumped in it, and the rest is history. He ended up driving that thing and then jumped in another one, and Roland Leon put him in his dragster, and next thing you know, he won the Winter Nationals. So he's always, drag racing was everything to him. Conversely, Don Schumacher is a businessman. He's a Roger Penske type of business guy. There's a lot going on outside of racing, but it's still, and much like Roger or Rick Hendrick, guys like that, he has this unbelievable itch to not lose at anything in life, and he loves winning. And thank God. Oh, that's my wife's phone. Sorry. Can you hear it?
Yes.
It sounds like a 1940 movie phone. So
I'm
anyway,
like, do you have a landline?
It's
no,
a
it's actually her
rotary
cell
dial.
phone. You can get it if you want. Sorry. Now you're going to see her run behind me.
It's all good. This is 2020. It's just what this year is.
Listen, she's been a part of the Freak Nation as long as you have, dude.
Yeah, that's why she stays in the other room. She's smart.
Yeah.
So what was I saying?
With the businessman, Don Schumacher,
Schumacher.
and he's
Yeah,
does not want to lose.
Yeah, I can't. You know, I mean, he owns 7 teams right now. At one point, owned 8 teams, 4 Top Fuel, 4 Funny Car. I could pick the phone up and call him right now, and he could be fishing wherever. Now it's his new love is fishing, but he'll always pick the phone up or call you right back. And with all the business stuff, I always say to him, why aren't you out on an island somewhere, enjoying yourself, enjoying this money that you've made for your family? But he loves the drag races, thank God. So yeah, so driving for those 2 guys has been pretty cool in the sense that they're so different. And I'm still very tight with Don Perdome. In fact, we live very close together, and I usually hear once or twice a week either a text message or he'll just call me, hey man, what are you doing, kid? You know, it's the same thing. And he'll just call and start talking about a conversation he had with Tony Stewart that morning, or just kind of he's just another dude. But it's fun to have those conversations with such a legendary guy that I learned so much from. So yeah, very different owners, but very cool to be able to say, you know, I've driven for both of them.
Now, I want to throw this. You and I have had some conversations far away from microphones. We've talked about road racing and Formula One. You're a big fan. Even talked about drifting at one point. You've always been in drag racing, but you had skills that would have fit in road racing or something else. Do you ever miss not doing that when you were coming up?
Yeah, but I luckily, because of where I ended up in drag racing, I got to go do some of that, especially when I got to be around you guys, and we went and did some of that. I mean, I'm one of few that raced in the Tony Stewart's Prelude to the Dream race every single year of that event. I was invited the first year, and as it grew to what it grew to, I was invited back every year. So that to me, that was one of the funnest times of my life every year. I think we went 7 years in that thing. I went off and ventured off and hung out with Tony and Lasowski and got to drive his World of Outlaws sprint car several times, the 360 sprint car, formula cars. I went and got to do that a couple different weekends with the Skip Barber guys and actually raced in one of their races. Little things like that. I got to do the crossover event in Anaheim on the Supercross track one year, wearing Jeremy McGrath, my buddy's boots that he gave me right out of his trailer, and I still have them. And that's an event they used to have for media people. They would have on that same track on Friday before the race, the big race on Saturday. So I've gotten, because of where I've gotten to be in drag racing, to do a lot of that stuff I would love to do. I love dirt racing. I love jumping in cars still to this day. But yeah, you know, and I got to go test with IROC, which I got to run Talladega twice in Chicagoland and test with the IROC series, and actually go around Talladega and spend the whole day with Dick Trickle mumbling to me on his radio while he's bump drafting me and telling me how to draft and how to look at the big flag and what the wind's doing, and just crazy stuff like that. So unfortunately, IROC didn't go because they were looking to get me in the series, but to spend time running around in IROC cars with some of the best drivers in the world, that was something else I'll never forget. So I've gotten to do that stuff. Am I glad I didn't go do it for real? No, because I would go do that, and when I would jump back in the funny car, I kid you not, every time I would go run off doing some other racing, and I would get back in that funny car for qualifying that next race. The first time you do the burnout, you're like, there is nothing. The coolest things I've gotten to go drive, a 410 World Outlaw sprint car is about as close as it gets, with that much power and that kind of car, to what our funny car is, but it doesn't hold a candle. Nothing holds a candle to what a nitro funny car. When you step on 11,000 horsepower, it just reminds me that I'm glad I ended up where I ended up, because it's the most insane race car I've ever stepped on the gas. And it'll remind me that every time. It'll remind me that this weekend in Indy. It's just a crazy, crazy race car that you still wonder how they're letting us do this in these cars. So, yeah, I'm glad I get to do what I get to do.
Well, I've got to ask you this, and I hope this doesn't change the mood, because this is great what you're going through, what you're telling us, what you're sharing. You've always been candid. But I know that you and I have talked about racing in IROC. You had to win a championship to get into IROC. By the time you won your championship in 2016, IROC was done. Did that disappoint you?
Yeah, but the Prelude came along. And the Prelude to me was, I don't want to say it was as good as Jay Signori, and what he built with IROC was unbelievable. But the Prelude was pretty darn cool. I mean, at one point when we had F1 drivers in, and we had IndyCar drivers, we had the best NASCAR drivers. We had them from all over the place in these cars that just weren't normal. Dirt late model, big inch motors on one of the most historic, fast, banked half-mile dirt tracks in the world. And you throw that all together, and I'll never forget, every single year you would show up there. And I just told somebody this the other day in an interview. You would never see a Kyle Busch or Jimmy Johnson or any of those guys, maybe Jimmy, but a lot of those NASCAR guys, you could go to the NASCAR race and they're all business, like I am at my racetrack when somebody comes out. You get to the Prelude, and I've never seen so many guys smiling that you never see smiling at a racetrack. You get into this mode and what we do, and it's all business. It's your job. It's work. But that Prelude, it brought something out in all of us that here we are in a car that nobody drives for a living. And it's out of our pay scale a little bit uncomfortable. And I always felt like I was in over my head. But shoot, I finished 6th one year, 9th another year. I would bring the car back most of the time in one piece. And that was my goal, was not to make a fool of myself. And it was on the biggest stage. At one point, it was a pay-per-view that people on a Wednesday night that people were raising millions of dollars for great charities. But here I am going into turn 3 with Kyle Busch and Jimmy Johnson and Juan Montoya all around you, and you're in this car so far over your head, and you're in your head, you're like, in order to do good, I've got to keep it matted to the floor, because in those cars, if you lift, it goes to the wall. And it's just everything about that race brought every sense of everything you had to be a race car driver and still feel like you were, oh God, the caution would come out and you would go, how many laps are left? You look up and they go 30 laps. You're like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm going to make it. Like, just craziness. One year I blew a booger out. I was hitting bumps and it blew a booger out onto my lip. And of course, during the race, you can't get up in there to get it out of there. So I had to race the rest of the race with a booger, and I'm trying to get it off my lip. And I'll never forget my dad. I flew my dad out there that one year, and we came off the track and I backed it into the pit area. And I'm laughing in the car, and he starts taking my gloves, and he said, "What's so funny?" And I pull my helmet out. It was a big booger on my lip, and I go, "I've been driving with that booger on I've been driving with that booger on there for so long." One of those moments.
Everybody can relate to that. We've all had booger moments.
Oh yeah. We were talking about a championship, and Ron, I've got some video prior
hold
to you.
On, one second. Keep going.
Okay.
Hey, Shelley.
I've got some.
Call this number back. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Okay. Hey, it's the Freak Nation. It happens for.
This is live, right?
Yeah. I've got some video from, I think, 2006. Let's take a look at this.
But without further ado, Ron, quit looking off. You're on our show. Would you please welcome the man who almost had the championship for 2005, Ronald C. Capps. Welcome, Ronnie.
Almost again. Whatever. Thanks for bringing it up.
Whatever, yeah.
Leave it to the freak. I was at the top end. I was hanging with our Budweiser folks.
I saw you.
I thank you. It was like, did you go out first or was it John?
Yeah, I went out first.
You went out first.
Smoked the tires.
Now, Ron, you probably remember that instance of losing that championship. It was right there. Does it still sting talking about that instance in 2005?
Yeah, but I kind of forgot about that moment. The they all run together, kind of, because it happened, I think, 4 times before we finally went. I think I was runner-up 4 or 5 times.
Oh,
3 of those were last day of the last race of the year, waking up Sunday morning with a chance to be a world champion and coming down all to that one day, and middle of the afternoon, like, you know, against Selzy, we lost it by maybe 6 points. Beckman by 2 points. I mean, this is down where you think back, one qualifying position at one race might have changed things. And that, so I remember that now. Yeah. And there was, all of them were so heartbreaking at the time, but I think every one of those, you know, it added a wrinkle here. It added to my personality. It added to my drive to win it. Every one of those hurt so bad, but they somehow inside of me, they made me better for the next one. And then I was ready for the next one. And people are like, how are you not throwing up? I go, well, I did throw up, but I'm ready to go. And I get up and cut the best light of my, you know, in races and just drive my best. And so I think every one of those helped me for sure down the road for the next time we had a chance at running for a championship.
Are you one of those guys that remembers the losses more than the wins in the championships?
Yes. Yeah. A lot of times it's the, you know, hole shots and things like that that stand out more. You know, although the championship, I remember that day because it was Saturday night when we clinched, which was awesome. We had a huge party in the pit area. And so that, to me, that stands out because it was such a moment. But a lot of moments to me, the quick ones that come to my brain are ones that I lost close races and I felt like I let my team down because I was a fraction of a second behind the other driver, and you lose on a hole shot. And it's the worst way to lose. Letting the car move around and get out of the groove, little things like that you just feel like you failed. And I know we've talked before, drag racing, you don't have another lap to make better. You know, road racing, NASCAR, whatever, you miss a corner a little bit, you float up in a turn a little bit. You're like, okay, the spotter says settle down. You make a better lap. The next one you make up for it. Drag racing, that's it. You step on the gas and that's it. I mean, it is what it is.
I remember that time. I forget where it was, maybe Pomona somewhere. The car blew up and you had a whole chain of things that were pretty bad, the bad season. You get out of the car, you're taking your gloves off, you're throwing stuff at the car and your helmet. I mean, you were completely, and I really felt for you at that time. Do you remember that moment? If you remember the losses, that seemed to be a pretty down time for you. Yeah,
I have those moments I have in my phone, and I look in my phone. Wow. I've got certain, there's moments that you want to remember to help you down the line, or you want to remember for certain reasons of not to do that, or why it happened, or just basically, it's those moments, that I remember the throttle stick in Atlanta, Georgia, one year. And I saw an interview the other day that they did, and I got out and talked about, and I probably shouldn't have said it on TV, but I was like, now I know, I think, what people go through when a plane is going down and they know that they're not going to make it. Like that last few seconds of somebody's life, unfortunately, in an accident like that, because the throttle's stuck at 300 something miles per hour. And I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, where there's trees everywhere. You jump the wall or you go off the end of the track, you're going into trees and you're not going to probably make it that fast. And I couldn't get the throttle undone. And they said I was 347 miles per hour, the front wheel sensor said, when the engine blew up. I reached over and hit the fuel shutoff to blow it up, which is something you never trained to do. So little moments like that where you look back and, either you have a video saved or a phone picture saved that luckily in our sport, it's chronicalized with you guys, with the media, where you can look back at videos and pictures and either shake your head or you go, yeah, it was a great moment. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was, it's always fun, I guess, to look back, good or bad.
Ron, do you have time to think about your family, your kids, your wife during those instances? I've never been in a situation like that other than climbing the side of a mountain, think I'm going to die, but I didn't have a family then. but do you think about your family in those instances that you could perish?
Yeah, not during. Try not to. You try not to think about any of that stuff anywhere near the run. There's been times where I sat in the car and oil down, and you start thinking about things like that, and then I think it takes the edge off of you a little bit, and I think you get a little complacent, and you start thinking too many good foo-foo thoughts like that, so to speak. It's not good when you've got to go up there and try to rip your opponent's heart out at the starting line, and you've got to manhandle this race car and get it to the finish line, you know, and you look up and they're Pomona and it's however many thousands of people up there. It's just those moments you don't want to be thinking about your kid's birthday or anything like that, you know. And I've had that happen where it creeps into your head right before a run and you're like, get out of my head, get out, you know. You just I'm sure race car drivers will tell you that, whether they're road racers or oval racers. You got to try and stay focused, but I think we're all ADD a little bit, and I think you know, there's times when we have those weird thoughts creep. I used to sit in the car and go over all the bad situations that could happen, and when it does happen in front of you, the next car, and there's a bad accident, that's like, wow. Then you got to strap back in, and it's hard to do sometimes. But there was a time there early in my career where you go over everything in your head. Okay, if I'm on fire, what am I doing? And it's a program thing: shoots, fuel, the whole thing. And then you think, okay, what happens to the throttle stick, or what happens to this or that? And you kind of go through your head of what to do if the bad things happen. Then I always take that right out and I add something good. What's going to happen when we turn the wind light on and I get out of the other end and we're holding a Wally? And then I try to leave it at that with a nice, good thought at the end. And then they start the car. So that's a perfect scenario.
See, Ron, that's why we like you so much, because you're honest with these answers. What we get so frequently is, no, when I put the helmet on, it's just, you know, things change. I'm good to go. That's just not reality. I like how you said we're all ADD to a point, and we all have these things creep in our minds. So the fact that you're conscious of that and can just reprogram yourself on a moment's notice and smash it out of the way, that's incredible, because it's not easy. Yet that's a part of your job. That's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Well, it is. I mean, it's just people want to think that it's so easy to do. It's not. It's not. Some people
go, what's going through your mind? You know, you get asked sometimes, and I just want to say, you don't even want to know what's going through some of our minds of certain race car drivers. I talked to Robby Gordon on the phone yesterday. We were working on something, and I hadn't talked to him in a couple of years. Well, he called my cell phone. And it threw me back to this time I went to the Indy 500, and it's that year that he caught fire, actually was on fire and came in the pit area. And I was with Skoll, I think, at the time. I didn't tell him on the phone, but I tell people the story all the time because methanol is burning. He's on fire. He somehow doesn't get out of the car. They put water on him. He comes in for the pit stop. He goes back out. And I may not be getting the story totally correct, but I mean, this is basically what happened. And I'm down on pit road, and I'm watching all this happen. He either buckled back in or just had them douse him, refilled it, and went back out. I think he still finished top 5, but I went back to our hotel downtown, and I see him walking up the escalator at the Hyatt, and he's just walking in, and I'd already heard that he'd gotten burned. Not bad, but it burned his legs and his stomach and everything because it was just burning in the car. And he was going to meet, he had a thing set to meet sponsors that gotten on his car for that weekend, and he was still showing up for that on Sunday night after the race. And I remember being on the escalator going, Robby, like, what do you do? Why aren't you in the hospital of all things? And from that time on, that's just, you got that, guys like that are just wired that way. Like, and there's been times where I think to myself, well, I guess I am a little bit sometimes as well. But, you know, guys like that I look up to, you think, God, what is going on in their head?
You've been around long enough now that you mention it. Some of the new guys that are coming in, are you the guy they looked up to in the past, and they ask you questions like that? What are you thinking about? How do I do this? How do I learn from you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you get asked by these kids coming up, and even some of them that I race with, some of the younger ones, they may have a question. I did the same thing. I used to go to Doug Coletta, Kenny Bernstein I've gone to in the past. I always had Snake around me, and I've had Ed McCulloch, of course, was my crew chief for a lot of those years. Guys like that were either driven or been in the seat. So, I mean, I've been asked, you know, and I never give advice. I won't go on my way to tell somebody. I've watched guys drive and do something that I think I wouldn't do in the car. What always bugs me more than anything in a fuel car on the burnout is I'll watch guys go to the burnout and then just pull the brake, almost coming to a sudden stop. And I don't think they realize where the fuel lines are of the car. And you could easily pull too hard or stop too quick and create an air bubble. And I'm sure you've seen it in the past. That air bubble goes up and the car shuts off as they're backing up from the burnout and they can't figure out why. Or erratically put it into forward or reverse. I've always tried to be real smooth when I started driving for Don Prudhomme. So I've always watched certain guys, but I would never go throw my advice on them. But if they ever came over and said, "Hey man, is there anything I'm doing? I'd love to have your advice." I'll go, "Well, as a matter of fact, you know, I would do this a little different. I always try to do this. This is the way I approach this part of driving." So yeah, it's always neat to have somebody come over because I was that same driver going to Ed McCulloch or Snake before I ever got to be where I was at.
In talking about the legends, is the Schumacher Force rivalry as legit as the fans think it is? Do they hate each other?
You know, it goes in waves. It's funny. For a while, yes. Yeah. There were some times there where and most of it's because they're hiring these guys back and forth, these crew chiefs. And it's in Brownsburg, it's almost a laugh because it's almost like they're crossing the street, you know, to go to work and they want this guy or this guy. And I don't have to mention any names, but there for a few races, and I'm sure the media and you guys, you know, it was all over in the news. They did not like each other. I can tell you firsthand because I'm really good friends with John Force, probably still one of my best friends out there. And of course, I'm around my boss, Don Schumacher, all the time. So I was in the middle.
Oh,
and,
jeez.
But there's been times right after that, and like right now, where Don would give everything off his back to help John Force out with something. And even when they were not getting along and they absolutely hated each other over certain things, each guy would still, if it came to something or somebody needed something, they would still help them. But yeah, it was not fabricated. Trust me. They did not like each other at times. It's okay right now with Force sitting out. I think.
With Force gone.
Although I'm hearing rumors, so it might get started back up again here before 2021. So we'll just see how all that goes.
Well, Ron, we don't need to get into the minutia of that, of why John's there, why John isn't there. But you're a fan of all sports, all motorsports, and you know whether it's Michael Schumacher or Jeremy McGrath or Joe Montana, or I could even say Tom Brady. I could go on and on and on. But with John Force, is there any champion in any other sport that has meant to their sport like John Force in drag racing?
No, not what he's done. And I mean, I'm the second winningest funny car driver and not even in the same zip code. I will never, ever, nobody will ever surpass what he's won. He was so dominant, and he's the reason I went to funny car. Really, Don Prudhomme said, "Hey, kid, I'm going to build a funny car team to go after this Force juggernaut. Do you want to drive for me?" And first of all, I'm like, "I'll drive anything for you, Don Prudhomme," first of all. But the fact that he wanted to go into funny car, Kenny Bernstein jumped back in with a monster funny car, if you remember that. So many people went into funny car racing, and that's why Don Schumacher built the first team with Bazemore and those guys. He was so dominant in the 80s and 90s with Austin Coyle and those guys, and he's just such a character, and he transcended so much outside of the sport. It's cool driving for Snake and for Don, and I used to get asked all the time how, you know, people know a few names in drag racing, people that don't follow it, people that might watch The Bachelor on TV or something, have no idea about racing, but they know a few things. If they're a little bit older, they know the Snake and the Mongoose because of Hot Wheels, right? Big Daddy Don Garlitz, Shirley Cha-Cha Down. They know that because of the nicknames and hearing a radio ad maybe when they were a kid. But John Force with the TV show, but even before that with the commercials. He took it so far out that this old truck driver everybody just wanted to have a beer with and sit on a couch, and that's who he is. He really brought so much attention to drag racing. Winner driver of the year awards over Earnhardt and other drivers, Michael Schumacher, people back in the day when he was winning those awards, really brought NHRA up for different times of where fans from other motorsports would pay attention. So I still get asked. I got asked last night in another interview, like, who's the one guy that, even though he's not out there right now, who's the one person that you either hate racing or you absolutely love to race? And it's still John Force. He finds a way to get up for it. He's still the big name. He's still the guy. And all of my career, when I was not doing well at times, he would. This is how big a heart he has. People wouldn't understand, or unless you go back and watch some of the interviews, but he would pull you into interviews after he whooped your ass, and he would get you TV time and mention your sponsors, even though they are completely contradictory to a sponsor on his car. Like a no-no. Like, I would never mention a sponsor that's, I'm not going to go into names, but I would never mention one that would, another oil company. I would not go out of my way. So he would do that, and he's done it a million times, and he's done it for other drivers, and I don't think they even realized it. And then you'd hear that driver ripping on Force in the media about something else, and sometimes you want to go, hey, remember this guy with a big heart? So he's still the guy. To answer your question, I don't think anybody else had done that, without maybe the exception of Petty or Earnhardt. Or guys with one names like Mario,
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to mention this, Kenny, but when he was telling that story, John did that for us. Do you remember? Do you remember that night? You want to tell that story?
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Said, we were at the beginning, like in the first 4 months we were on the air. Nobody knew who we were. The fact that John came on the show, we were, ecstatic. We were bouncing off the walls. And John talked about one of our sponsors, a sandwich shop, and the sponsor called us and said, "Who is this guy?" And we said, "He's the Michael Jordan of racing." And she called around to all of the stores within an hour of Pomona, and there was nothing going on. And John was just having a party. Bring me another tray of those sandwiches. And he was having a ball. So, yes, John does that. People don't realize how much he does it. And let me follow all of that up with the question. How much is the sport going to miss him? Because at some point, he's going to retire.
He'll still be around. And he's enough of a circus on his own that he doesn't actually need to be in the car at that point, that he's still going to be Barnum and Bailey. That's who he is. So I'll miss driving for him whenever he does get out. He still talks about putting me in his car and replacing him, even though I'm in my 50s now and I'm not a kid anymore, but he's always joked about it, but he's not joked about it. When we first got together racing, he would say, "Kid, you're going to replace me. You're the guy. I love you to death. Love you like a son." So, he'll be missed when he does get out of the seat. But he's got so much going on with his daughters and now with the grandkids. Ashley's sons, they're a riot to follow on social media, and so is Ashley for that matter. But those two kids, they're junior dragster racing. Robert's daughter is doing great racing and junior dragstering. He's going to have this conglomerate. He's going to have 6 or 7 or 8 teams of just his family, and he's still going to be out there. So to answer that question, he'll be missed out of the seat, but we may, I don't know if it's good or bad, we may have more John Force in a TV show than we had when he was driving. Because for a while there was like, oh my God, they'd have their cats on. And you were like, what is next? You're going to have 2 minutes of what else can you think of? John Force family. Like, we used to drive us crazy because you're trying to get your sponsors on TV, and they would go to interview and they say, we don't have time. And then you'd watch a telecast on Monday and there was a show on Ashley's cats or on something going on with the family. And then the next time I'd see the TV people, I go, so you didn't have time for me to give you 20 seconds or my sponsors, but you guys ran a 2-minute thing on the Force family. But God bless them. I mean, that they brought TV ratings in. But so to address that, we may have way more John Force than we want when he's out of the seat. He's gonna have a lot of time to run around on a scooter, and the only thing is he'll smell better because now he leaves his fire suit on all day, and he just cooks, and he smells so bad by the end of the day wearing that fire suit all day. Oh, and I give him crap all the time. I'm like, dude, put some deodorant on. All you do is just a couple sticks. You're gonna wear that thing all day. I mean, it's just roasting in there, all that BO.
Well, I know we're running low on time, but if we're going to talk about families and kids, what about your kids? And who's going to replace John Ford, or who's going to replace Ron Capps when you're done in the seat? I mean, your personality is large for drag racing as well.
Well, both kids have done it. The junior dragsters. Taylor, we did the Pure Speed school, and she got her super comp license a couple of years ago. But we agreed that she needed to finish college, which she's got 4 more months. And she's always wanted to follow the Force girls, Alexis, and just and some other people she's really gotten to be around drag racing with. Our sport has always had, you know, 3rd, 4th, 5th generation racers and women that have done very well and not just competed but won championships. Erica was one of the big idols that Taylor had when she was a kid. So I foresee her maybe wanting to do that, and once she's done with college and she wants to get serious about it, Caden, he could take it or leave it. He doesn't have a driver's license right now, and he's 19. The kids nowadays are so different with everything.
Yep.
It's just a different world. So he wants to go do something. He wants to get a super comp and work his way up, and he wants to do what I do. But he's got to finish college too. I mean, that's just something we've talked about. So hope so. I hope they do it. There's times when I don't want them to do it, though. You know, you watch some of these things that happen on the track, and I always feel like I'm invincible with all my stuff on. But I don't know how Force does it watching a family member in a car. It would drive me crazy, let alone lining up next to one. I don't know how he does that. That's beyond me. So hopefully we'll carry on the tradition with the Caps in a funny car or dragster.
Ron, you brought up women
Awesome.
in drag racing, and something that we've prided ourselves on is accentuating the fact that of all the motorsport series out there, the diversity in drag racing, Mexicans, Spanish, blacks, women, and now with the problems with the social unrest and social justice and Black Lives Matter, leading up into this, did you recognize the diversity that you had in your sport versus all the other sports, and how important that's been for minorities and women on this planet?
You know what's funny with drag racing? We never collectively, we never thought of it that much. And I'm speaking, I've got Antron Brown, who is the most down-to-earth, championship-winning African-American, and you never hear him out there bragging about that particularly. And with the women, and you go back to Shirley Muldowney and what, you know, Angel and Erica Enders, and it honest to God, we look at it like another race car driver, and we've never had those type of issues within our sport. And it's been always just this one big family. I've had conversations, you know, and it's still, even if you were talking to Antron Brown right here, he would tell you the same thing. It's, you know, it's hard to watch at times, and you see what's going on and what turns fans on and off in other sports, stick and ball sports, motorsports. But even when they had Danica and NASCAR, and you had talk of women and or minorities in NASCAR, and they created the whole program for minorities, it's just been that thread in NHRA. It's just been built in. You never thought about it. You know, the first African-American top fuel champion, or I mean, you go back in history and look at drag racing, it's been every ethnicity that's won races, and it's just never been something that we've ever been vocal about. And so I'm proud of that. You know, I love the fact that we just we do what we do. But Antron jokes that we're like brothers, and I've watched him grow in the sport, and he's probably one of the most, if you could ask for a role model for a sport, I mean, he's done so well with it. Now he's become a team owner, and So it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun to be next to him and work with him and the women. You know, I don't even look at them as women. When Courtney got into John's car and she was whooping our asses a couple of years ago, I just, in my head, I'm racing John Force. I mean, I don't even think of her until she gets out of the other end, takes the helmet off, and you're like, you know, holy cow, you know, or any of the women. So I raced them and got my butt whooped by them. And at that point, it was never, I just got beat by a girl either. When I beat him, I never thought, wow, I wasn't going to lose to a chick. Like, you never even thought about that. You know what I mean? So it's just been the way that we've been brought up. And I think if we did, we'd have 3 or 4 people around us that would say, hey, what are you talking about?
Right.
Let that be an example for the entire country, the entire world right now. We're all the same, yo. We're all the same. Let's treat each other the same, for sure.
Ron, do you find that as you get older, and I say this for a father of a 6.5-year-old.
Hey, you switched me around. Now I'm over Crash.
Well, here, I'll put you over here. All right? How about that?
Oh, whoa, wait, what's going on?
Hey, as a father, Ron, listen, damn it.
I got you. All right, go ahead.
Hey,
Am I going the right way? Oh, it's the wrong way.
Other way,
No,
way.
go ahead. There you go.
He's
Go
over
ahead.
there.
I'll put you over here, you bastard. All right?
I got
Oh,
you.
now you're confusing.
I got you. Go ahead. There's
Ron,
a story of a man named Kenny.
this guy right here. You don't want me to play this other video, Ron Capps.
Oh,
I won't.
stop it.
I won't.
Stop it.
Ron, listen, I'm the father of a 6.5-year-old, and it's the greatest damn thing that's ever happened to my planet other than that right there, and then this guy. Damn it.
He's over there. Yeah.
I got
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself go back to 20 years prior to, go back to before children? You're fresh into your marriage. Go from that point to where you are now, emotionally, psychologically. Like right now, there are songs that come on, and I could bawl my eyes out thinking about my daughter. Are there instances where you just get so emotional as an older guy, or are you as leathered as freaking Karamacinas at this point?
Well, I'm not going to answer that last part, but
name in the
yeah,
exactly.
And again, on my phone, I save these pictures. There's, the year I think we lost by 2 points to Beckman, I was okay. I was, it was brutal. But Taylor at that time was in the tow vehicle, and she came over and was crying and bawling and started hugging me by the tow vehicle. And somebody, Richard Shooter, and it ended up in a magazine. There was a picture of, me standing there, and she's hugging me and she's bawling her head off. Well, when she hugged me, I lost it. Like, I was okay till then. But there's moments where luckily I could look back at these pictures and things that I've saved. Winter circles. There's one that I put up as Throwback Thursday not too long ago. A Pomona. We doubled up with Larry Dixon for the snake. And I'm holding Taylor, and she, not very old. She might be just a 2 or 3 years old, and we're holding her in the winter circle, and it's Shelly, me, and her, and we're holding the Wally, and the Wally's bigger than she is. And, just those moments. And same thing with Caden. So I've luckily won a lot of races on the West Coast when the family has gone. Some of our favorite racetracks are here with Sonoma and Vegas, and where friends and family are at. So those are special moments that still I look back. To your point, I'm such a big, like you guys, I'm into music and I love rock and roll, and I've just been a music fan. It's like my number one thing I love to do besides racing. So songs will take me right back to certain moments, just like a certain smell or whatever will. And a lot of times I have a flashback of a certain time or a certain track, and it'll take me right back to that moment, good or bad, but most of the time good. And it's always got something to do with the kids growing up. And Force used to tell me all the time, number one thing he would tell me from the beginning when Taylor was just born, he said, don't make the mistake. Enjoy the kids as much as you can. It's hard to do when you're in this job. And I said, oh, shoot, I know what you're saying. I'm going to. Well, I still didn't feel like I did, because you get so into what you want to be the best at what you do. And most of the time, it's not just driving the car that makes you, get to do the sport for a long time. It's being good with everything around and the sponsors. So you're gone a lot. You're traveling. And you're focusing at the track on race day and qualifying, that you don't get those moments, and you miss graduations and you miss games and first moments. And so I missed a lot of that stuff. but I've tried to balance it where I take the kids and family with me on a lot of those appearances I've done. So I've tried to listen to Force's advice. But yeah, it's just like you said with music, it's memories that take me. And the best part, again, is like with you guys or TV, being involved in something that's telecasted, whether it's radio or TV or now here, that moments are brought back to you, like videos that you've shown where you forget and you see it. And Gary's year he retired, Selzy, he cried at almost every race over the dumbest thing. I thought for a while he was pregnant. I mean, he was emotional about the weirdest stuff. If something showed up on a sandwich, you know, I'd be having lunch with him, he would get emotional and start crying. And I'm like, what's wrong? He goes, I don't know. I don't know what's my body I'm going through. Ask him about it next time. He went through this emotional stage of retiring, but he had so many emotions going on. And I go, I hope I'm not like that my last year. My God. So, you know, it's cool because I think he was getting emotional with moments that he was not going to have anymore. And I think that's the whole point I'm trying to make.
That doesn't change either, partner. Quickly, on September 1st, my daughter called me. She was in the car driving to Vegas with her daughter, my granddaughter. She calls me on the phone and says, you know, it's September. And she demanded that I get the Earth, Wind, and Fire September out. You know, that's one of my favorite songs. And she stayed on the phone until she heard it play out of my phone. That doesn't
Do you
change.
remember?
And you'll love that. Then all the stuff you put in there, and when they throw it back at you, that'll bring you to tears.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome.
Hey, Ron, what the hell were you doing here, man? What are you doing?
It looks like a phone at first, but I don't know. I don't think we had phones back then, did we?
No.
We were on break, so
Right.
I could tell we're on a commercial break or something, because you guys are all doing different stuff. Although Crash might be talking to me about something, I'm ignoring her. You know, that was Brute, so we might have had Blackberries. Remember those things?
Yeah.
It looks like something small in my hand. It was probably Ed McCulloch having Ronnie Thompson, our assistant, text me and go, get your ass over here. He wants to start the car. And if
Where
Ace was
are
waiting
you?
on you, how many times do I sit with you guys and I go, I got to go. If you walk in the pit area and Ace is standing there like this, waiting because you're late starting and warming the car up, I don't care what you're doing for a sponsor. He did not care. I did not want that. So that might have been a message coming to me like, you better get to the pit area.
What about this? Is this a moment where you're thinking to yourself, why in the hell am I here?
No, that's right after it looks like.
Yeah. Again, you guys are on break, and I think I'm pondering. I'm pondering the thought of going back to Golden from the night before, probably, because it looks like it's Denver. And I'm probably wanting to go back and pick up anything I left in a bar from the night before.
Hey, do you remember that time it was Sonoma? We were with our San Francisco station, you and Tommy Johnson, and we went to some bar at
It was Sacramento, our Sacramento station.
What was it was on the campus
Skomas.
of what?
We went to Skomas.
Was that what it was? How do you have this memory, Ron? What the hell?
Well, as soon as you said that. Yeah. No, I do remember that. That was fun.
Because that was a night that I didn't think you and Tommy would remember.
Well,
if you know what I mean.
And we weren't supposed to stay in the city that long, and we ended up staying quite a bit longer. And I had to cancel some plans later that evening. Yeah, those are fun times. God, I forgot about that till you just mentioned that.
Right? What was the campus there? The University of California in what the hell is that?
Davis.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, Davis is near Sacramento. Yeah.
Yeah. We were with our Sacramento. Was it our Sacramento station or our?
It was.
That's
it was our
what
Sacramento station. Yeah.
Holy smokes!
You guys remember more than I do.
Well, we've got three heads here, and Ron, think about all the things that we've been through these 20 years. You've got 9/11, and I'm going to dismiss a whole lot of stuff here. 9/11, Osama bin Laden
from the racquetball that I
was that on my thigh? Where was it? My butt or my thigh? Where the hell did you nail me?
I hit you in the back of your leg. I kept telling you to get out of the way. When you get to be an open player, you learn to watch the ball. And most amateur racquetball players, they hit the ball and they stay in the middle of the court and face the front wall. And if the more you play racquetball, you watch the ball until right at point of impact. So you don't rarely see what's going on and it's about to happen in front of you. So the ball's traveling 180 miles per hour. I kept telling him, I go, don't get in my way. I can't see where you're at on my backhand shot. And I'll hit you square. I mean, it had a welt. That was brutal.
Just go, bam.
All right.
All right.
There you go. End it with a raspberry.
End it with the raspberry.
Ronnie, you're one of the OGs, man. We appreciate all the time you taking time out to join us. It's you're part of the fabric of what we created for 20 years, bud.
Yes.
That's been fun. As always, when I get off of your show, I go, whew, I didn't get fired yet. I made it through another one.
Yay!
Well, I think you did. I think you made it through it, brother.
It gets harder and harder every year. Politically correctness gets harder and harder every year.
Yeah, the margins.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you for being there for so long.
Thank you, buddy.
Awesome.
You got it, man. Thank you.
See ya.